Good evening. Welcome to the Cottonwood Heights business meeting for Tuesday, June 6, 2023. My name is Mike Wickers, Mayor of Cottonwood Heights. The first item on our agenda to get started this evening is a pledge of allegiance that I've asked our District 1 Council Member Matt Holton to lead us in. Please stand. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Item 3 on our agenda this evening is a citizen comment period. This is a time for citizens to address the council on whatever matters they desire. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. We will hold you to those 3 minutes. Please review the public comment procedures on the last page of the agenda. If you haven't already filled out a speaker comment card, please do so. When making comments, we request that you speak into the microphone so that your comments can be recorded. And please avoid any insulting language or comments. The audience should also avoid any expressions of support or disagreement. Council's here to listen, but you shouldn't expect to engage in a back and forth. If you do have questions, raise questions, the staff will respond to you within a few days. So far, it looks like I have one comment for this general comment period, which is Runar Bowman. Hi, Runar.
Hello, Mayor Wickers. Just for the record, my name is Runar Bowman and I live in District 3. And I just had just 2 comments I'd like to express to the council. One is that I noticed that on June 20th, you are scheduled to discuss fiber, which I believe is the build out in our neighborhood. I know that this has been an ongoing discussion. I just wanted to comment that maybe we could make a decision as far as maybe actually making this a reality, because it seems like this has been dragging out for quite some time. And I know that, there's issues, reason why that happens, but it'd be nice just to know if we have a decision in the near future where we could actually look forward to having a high-speed service in our community. That'd be great. So I'll look forward to that June 20th discussion, and maybe there'll be a decision made at that time, which I'll be looking forward to. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Hillside Plaza. I noticed that we have acquired meaning the city has acquired the property at Hillside Plaza. That brings a lot of questions, and I'm sure that, there's a lot to be discussed, but I did recall that prior to making the purchase, we had accepted, I believe, a grant, like $1 million grant for basically housing, which would require us to put in a certain density of housing and make it affordable for some individuals. And I was just wondering, that, because I understand that it sounds like we're making a decision here as far as how we want this place to look, which when we acquired it, I would hope we would have a really good vision of how we want it to look, but maybe we're not there yet. But, if we have that grant, does that make it a requirement that we're then it will be a housing centric development or not? Because you can only fit so many houses in that place. And I believe it's zoned for R1 at the moment, which is not high density zoning, if I'm correct, which would be nice if it would stay that way, as opposed to going vertical like Sugar House has gone. I think that would be a negative impact for the community. And also, how will this benefit our community? I mean, if it's just going to be housing, is that the best use of our millions of dollars of tax money? I would think that something like maybe a retail centric situation, like maybe down where Home Depot, Target, Trader Joe's, that little area down there, it's a little booming area. I'm sure you've all noticed. I go down there sometimes through the UPS store. There's no parking, meaning it's busy, which probably is good. And that adds to the tax base, people's jobs. I mean, it's a win-win, I believe. So, I mean, something like a retail centric setup might be beneficial for this community. Again, I'm just speculating here, but I'm just concerned about the $1 million we took in, which now we have to put housing in there. And I don't think spending all that money just to become a landlord, just to put up housing is the best use for that land that we've now acquired. So I'd be curious to see how this discussion plays out, and I hope to be involved in it. But I'm just kind of wanted to just mention some thoughts that come across when I was looking at some of the past notices on our website concerning that property. Thank you.
Thanks, Renar. Appreciate you coming. I can add just a little bit of insight to this. So we will be having another fiber discussion at our next meeting. And I wish it was as easy as just making a decision. It's there are so many factors that go into fiber, and so we are 100% focused on doing what's best for our citizens. So and that includes, you know, the roads they drive on, and trying to we understand how important it is to get fiber to the home, and so it's a really big priority, but we also feel like we have to do it the right way. And so the council's really been involved, and we'll continue that discussion. Lastly, on Hillside, there is no minimum housing requirement with that grant. So it does have to have some. There's no minimum whatsoever, which means it can not have. But the housing, we feel like, can be a good aspect of what we're talking about. But the retail that you're talking about is what's mostly on our mind as well, along with that, you know, a gathering town square. So something along those lines. But stay tuned. It'll be. Yep. So Dan Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan Mills, 6793 Vista Grande Drive. Sean Newell is my representative, my councilman, and I'm glad to be here. And three things I'd like to share. First of all, just I'd like to speak in favor of the sensitive lands ordinance as it sits. The way that the council has reviewed that and what the preparation that's gone before, as we consider sensitive lands, including slopes, and the fact that we live so close to faults, and that we have these very precious water sources that are flowing through our city. I think it's really important that we provide a degree of protection. This is not 1950, and things are a lot closer than they have been previously. And I applaud the council for being willing to look at solutions that address the fact that we're a little closer, and the structures that we have out our windows here. We live very close to them, and so it does require some unique treatment. Second of all, just a +1 to everything that the council has done regarding the Hillside Plaza. What a fantastic opportunity for the city, and especially seeing what the developers proposed initially. It's obvious that this needs to have our fingerprints on it. And as we find the right combination, I would advocate for something that will dramatically increase tax base per square foot of how it's used. And with the fewest number of cars, not to say that it all has to be walkable, bikeable, but I think that we want whatever transactions are happening in that area from a retail standpoint. I would advocate for things that provide an enormous amount of revenue to the city. And I appreciate your comment about trying to minimize the housing, but having a degree of housing. I think that's fantastic. The last thing I'd point out is that right now in Conwood Heights on Fort Union, there are 3 houses for sale that are right up against Fort Union Boulevard. We have a Fort Union master plan that just would require millions and millions of dollars to fully implement all in one fell swoop. So as we get opportunities, I think it's always a great chance, especially with some of these properties that are in significant places. There's one just below Alpha Coffee that a resident that struggled to not park his large boat and his construction equipment on the sidewalk, actually, but the sidewalk terminates right there, so that Apple Valley residents can't walk along Fort Union Boulevard and continue up to Alpha Coffee. This may be an opportunity where the property is changing hands to consider looking at the Fort Union master plan. And is there something that could be done in just reaching out to whoever is going to potentially buy that property? There's a second one that's down kitty corner to the elementary school, the Butler Elementary. That's again on a corner of Virginia Hills Drive, a very old and small part of our community. We're seeing some gentrification there, and this may be an opportunity on one that's very high profile on a significant corner. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. I don't see anybody online. Anything we need to add into the record at all? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, item 4 on our agenda for this evening is a public hearing on our proposed budget for the fiscal year 2023, 2024. We're going to have our Administrative and Fiscal Services Director, Scott Georges, come up and just give us some background on some updates that we've been working on. And then we'll open the hearing after that.
Okay, so some of the items here, we updated last council meeting. So we have changed our interest projections by a total of $370,000. That would be in the general fund, $250,000 net increase. CDRA fund, $25,000 net increase. Our stormwater fund, a $20,000 net increase, and our capital projects fund, a $75,000 increase. And this is a result of the current interest rate environment that we're in to try and, get close to what we think we might get in there. A little bit conservative, but get close to that.
Scott, real quick, it might be interesting for the public to know how we generate that interest, and the state actually offers a program
Yeah.
to that keeps our money obviously as safe as can be, but then has really competitive interest rates to allow
Yeah.
for interest anyway. I don't know if you want to explain
Yeah,
anything
so,
about it.
so really quick in a nutshell, the state has what they call the Public Treasures Investment Pool. Or fund, PTIF is what we refer to it close. It's really kind of nice in the state of Utah. We do a lot of things centrally, such as our pension plan is managed centrally by the state. And our investments are managed centrally by the state. And it's really nice because the people that do that focus and do that stuff day in, day out, all the time, and they have staffs that are there to help them do that. And some small entities out in other states, small entities are having to manage investments and manage, retirement and so on and so forth. And I think there's more risk in that because it's not what you do day to day, all the time and everything. Plus you can potentially have a lot of duplicate activities being done by multiple communities. So it's really nice because, as the mayor said, it keeps our money safe and it keeps our money fluid. We can have access to our funds that we have in the state treasury and in the PTIF Public Treasurers Investment Fund within about roughly 24 hours. If it's a huge amount of money, say 10 million plus, it might take 2 days or 3 days to get access to it. But we can anticipate and request that and get access to it. And it's really nice for us. And we get a really good return on investment from that, at least when compared to a fluid investment. And there's really no risk to us to lose money in that. I won't say that there's zero, but I've never seen it go negative in terms of an individual month, in terms of the return that we get on that. So it's a really good investment tool for us as a state, and we just send money off there. And our strategy is we try and keep as much money as we can in that fund, and then only pull it out when we need it to fund checks and things that we have going. So,
Thank you.
yeah. But with the current interest rates, we're up in the 4 to 5% range in terms of what we're earning, versus we were down around 1% and sometimes less at times in the past, 5 years when interest rates were extremely low. So there's a good and a bad side to interest rates being higher. So anyhow, sustainability projects, we added 30,000 for the pollinator park at Mount View Park to expand that current pollinator planting area that we have. And then there's $11,000 that'll be both expense and revenue, so a net zero for the community tree planting and sale event that we are planning to do sometime during the next budget year. Then new items that we have finalized, if you will, between the last meeting and this is our liability insurance increase is set at $23,000. And that's a reduction of $12,000 from what was included in the narrative below and in our, what is adopted as our tentative budget. Most of this $23,000 is directly related to the Hillside Plaza area that we are now both own and we have to insure. So the good thing is that if you take existing properties year over year, we really had a very, very flat liability insurance change, which is a really good thing for us. The other good thing is it's $12,000 less than what we have included in our tentative budget that we went over in the 1st of May. Our UFA contract pricing increase has now settled out at $212,275. That's a reduction of $57,000 from what we had in there. We had $270,000 as our placeholder for that contract. I can't remember the percentage on this. Riley, do you remember off the top of your head? Maybe
It's about 5,
4 to
I think
5,
it's
somewhere in that
4.9,
line.
4.8,
Yeah.
4.9.
Yeah, right in that range. So that, I feel that that's a pretty good place. It's kind of representative of what we're kind of seeing in many ways. So that's a good place for that to be. The items that remain, we talked about this earlier, our property tax, both rate and revenue. We are told what that will be by the State Tax Commission. That usually is available around the 9th to 10th of June. So we should get that within the week here. And they will tell us what our certified tax rate is and what the net revenue that will generate in terms of new revenue. The COLA that was included is 5.5%. We are now planning to shift that down to 3.5% based on the discussion earlier today in the work meeting. Each shift is about $100,000, or each shift of 1% is about $100,000 in net impact on the budget. Again, we'll have to finalize this, but the direction currently is 3.5%. That would save us about $209,000 in total compensation. The city attorney costs are tied to the COLA. So that would change this to be about an $8,000 net increase. And that would be a $7,000 reduction from what is included in that narrative and budget summary that's below. And then our Spillman police records, we have $30,000 in there as a placeholder. And we've been having a hard time getting everybody in the same room together to be able to have the discussion on what we want to do on that. But we think we have a potential solution. We just need to make sure that it's a workable solution that will be able to fit into that $30,000 range. And again, we just need to go over some of the details of that to make sure that that's really going to work for all parties involved. But we believe that that will be accurate. And then one last thing that's not listed here, we have listed in our budget a revenue of $300,000 for the telecom franchise tax. And based on discussion earlier today, we'll probably pull that out until the council makes a decision to go forward with that. And then we can always reinstate that. And that does not have to coincide with the beginning of a budget. We can do that at any point in time on a quarter start date anyhow. So takes about, we'll say 100 days of leeway from the beginning of any quarter in order to be able to get that implemented with all the different things that we need to do. So, but I think that's all that I have on that. If there are any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, I am looking back where where you're addressing expenditures, and I was under the impression that the council had come together around a 3.5% COLA and additional merit increase on staff. I'm looking and seeing here that it's the current COLA is included at 5.5. Could you address that, Scott?
Yeah,
or
we
Ken?
talked about that here. It's included at 5.5, but we're going to reduce it to a 3.5.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, just if I may, Mayor, just to reiterate, it hadn't been completely determined. We had that discussion in the work session, and that is going to be reduced down to that amount for consideration on the 20th.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Great. Well, thank you, Scott.
Yep.
So what I'll do now is open the public hearing process for anyone to comment on our proposed budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. Do not currently have any comment cards. I don't see anybody requests online. Come on up, Runar. You got 3 minutes, my friend.
I just noticed your posting up there, and I just want to say that it's a pleasant surprise to see, although they're small dollars, but it's a pleasant surprise to see that there is some consideration given to biodiversity in our community, meaning the sustainability projects, the pollinator garden. That's great. I'm a big fan of that, and seeing the hummingbirds have just arrived from down south. They're pretty hungry, so if we can help them out, that's excellent. So I appreciate that increase. And also the tree planting, I think, is excellent idea as well. I'm an avid walker. I walk through the community a lot and up to the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center for my exercise. And walking in the summer months with no shade really sucks. It's super hot outside and it makes it almost unbearable. And I don't walk midday just for that reason. So anything we can do to plant trees, especially shade trees, to give people who walk a break, that's excellent. And if you want to promote walking in this neighborhood or in this community, plant shade trees where people walk, because that will get them out of their cars. Because like I said, I don't walk if it's hot because you bake. It's ridiculous. You have to carry an umbrella. But if you have shade trees, it makes all the difference, creates a microclimate under those trees, promotes biodiversity, gives shelter to animals and insects. It's a win-win. So if you guys want to promote that, I'm all for it. I think that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Runar. Yeah, we're excited for the tree planting program as well. And actually it will include a part will allow our residents to purchase trees at a reduced rate to plant their own. So encouraging everybody, city along with residents, to plant trees. So thank you for those comments. Okay, not seeing any other comments, I will close the public hearing for our fiscal year 2023-2024 budget discussion. Item 5.0 tonight is a public comment period on a zoning exception. So I'm gonna, is Mike online with us, Tim, or do you want to cover that?
I'm here, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Okay.
great. So yep, I'm going to turn the time over to our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson, to just give a quick background on this.
Yeah, thank you. I won't do the full presentation since we did that in the work session and it's been presented to the Planning Commission as well. But just as a quick overview, this is a Title 14 exception request, and Title 14 governs standards for roadways and certain lots that access off of private roadways. The subject property is 3457 Magic View Drive, which is kind of in the eastern quadrant of the city, over by the cemetery, in that kind of area of the city. It's a lot at the end of an old private driveway that's 1 1/3 acres roughly, and it's kind of this non-conforming private road subdivision layout that was built in the 70s that well predates our city and our current ordinances. The exceptions being requested are exceptions pertaining to development along private roadways. One being that any new structure along a private driveway or roadway needs to be 50 feet away from the center of that roadway. And then another one being that any lot adjacent to a private roadway needs to be at least ½ acre in size, regardless of the zoning designation of the property. The applicant is requesting to subdivide this large property into 2 lots, and I'll just briefly go over kind of the high level findings of this. The lot itself is in a weird layout, a weird situation, and a lot of it is encumbered by an unbuildable hillside. The buildable kind of expandable area of the lot is in the front yard of the lot, basically in the southeast front corner of that lot, and it's relatively flat and developable. And the applicant is requesting or proposing to subdivide off that front corner into its own single family lot. That lot, as designed, has been shown that it can meet the minimum zoning standards of being 8,000 square feet and having an adequate front setback that's compliant with the R18 zone. It just runs into issues with these private roadway lot size and frontage requirements. So based on the analysis and the addressing issue that we discussed in the work session, staff is recommending approval of the exceptions. This was brought in front of the Planning Commission and a public hearing was held, and the Planning Commission also unanimously recommended approval of the application. It's only scheduled for public comment tonight with the council, and then we would anticipate bringing it back for action 2 weeks from today.
Great. Thank you, Mike. So at this time, I will open the public comment period on this zoning exception request. Is there anyone here that's interested in commenting? Come on up. Yep. State your name when you come up if you would for us.
Mike Spainhauer, I'm the architectural designer for the applicant for this project, and I'm really just here to answer any questions or if you have any comments that we can use in our design as well.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council for this? Thank you. Appreciate that. And I know, Mike, we mentioned that the interest from the council to try to find out the purpose of the private road half-acre lot and setback requirement. If we could get some staff help on that, why that was put in place in the first place, and maybe it's not unknowable, but if we could try to find that before we vote, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do some research in the prior ordinances and maybe the ordinances that were in place at the time of incorporation and follow up with the council on that.
Thanks, Mike. So at this time, I'll close the public comment period on this zoning exception request. Item 6.0 on our agenda for this evening is a quarterly report that will be given by our Unified Fire Assistant Chief Riley Pilgrim. Hi, Riley.
Mayor, how's it going? Council, it's good to be here tonight. So I have our quarterly report for a little later than we usually do it for January to March. So keep it kind of brief. Again, this is pretty, after reviewing it, it's pretty much on par with how things have been going out here for the last little while. So walk through this, and if you have any questions, let me know. So again, the quarter January to March, so we'll begin preparing the next quarter report here in just a couple of weeks. So as is pretty standard, we have just shy of 550 total incidents during those 3 months here in Collinwood Heights. 170 were emergent, which again, just as a reminder, those are dispatched as a priority 1 call. So when dispatch gets those details, they determine the urgency or priority that a call needs, so the apparatus can get there quicker. Now, when the captain goes en route and they hear more details, they can change it to a priority call, but that won't be captured here. So it shows 31% out of the gate. So 170, those 543 were dispatched as priority. And I imagine that probably is not quite double, but probably upwards more of 50% once our crews are getting details. So, but pretty standard for our call volume out here. I was looking at the 4-year comparison. It's pretty interesting to see how it's pretty stable. We've had a few small spikes, but even those spikes we're only talking, less than 20 calls between those years. So, so not a lot of change as far as the volume of calls that we're getting. So everything's looking pretty good there. Again, that's something we just monitor closely because that may determine, different things we need to do. So, as far as call types, so in that quarter, we had 4 structure fires. And again, structure fires don't mean typical picture total loss, huge fire, right? That just means when it's dispatched to the crew, there was some sort of fire inside the house. It could have been a dryer vent, which is small and kept pretty small, tiny. So the damage to the home was minimal. Then vehicle fires, we had 2 of those, and other fires are just classified as an outside fire, debris fire, dumpster fire, something like that. None of these stand out to me as anything significant that happened in that first quarter. We did have a house fire just a few weeks ago in a home that was being remodeled, which I'll have more information when I do the next report. But within this quarter, there wasn't anything too substantial that occurred. As far as medical calls go, pretty standard again, falls and sick persons are our top 2 categories most often. And then obviously with the winter months, vehicle crashes are up a little bit higher. Breathing problems and unconscious. So again, these are just classification that dispatch will provide or give the call when they take the notes and dispatch the crews. A lot of times we'll show up on scene and we'll find something that's slightly different or varied from this. Our reports will typically reflect that. Then outside of fire and EMS, these are the other calls that are most common for that quarter. So public service, which is everything else, right? That might be changing a battery in a smoke detector, unlocking someone's door, helping them to solve a minor problem at their house. Unintentional detectors and false alarm, false calls and malfunctions are typically similar. And unintentional detectors is when an alarm goes off that wasn't supposed to go off. Someone maybe pulled it, or there's just a false. It was sent not maliciously, but unintentionally. False alarms are if we see something, someone's driving by and then we show up and we don't find anything. That's typically what that is. And malfunctions are just an error in a system. So then people in distress could just be a variety of things. It could be a cold issue. It could be a lockout again, which kind of goes in public assistance, but it's just their problem is they weren't well and they weren't sick. They weren't hurt. They just needed some help with something. The other thing we watch closely again, usually, that's important to us is how much of our calls are we covering here in Collinwood Heights? And this goes back to the volume slide, right? If we start to see that we're relying on more units coming in to pick up those calls, and we need to kind of start looking at what we're doing. But right now our stations are covering 90+% of the calls coming in. So that's exactly where we want to be. So we're just shy of about 94% of all calls are either station 110 or 116. And then 126 will naturally come in. So they're the next closest station out in Midvale. So just off of 7th East and Fort Union. Then others will just be a Sandy unit or whoever else is coming in. And again, ambulances, we have one ambulance here in Collinwood Heights year round. That's the one at 110. They're picking up the most of our transports. Seasonally, we'll put one at 116 with the peak load. So that takes the burden off of our ambulance here so they can run up and down the canyons for the ski resorts. So it's housed at 116 typically. We also have an ambulance up both canyons, but when those get busy, which is extremely common in these winter months, then this ambulance starts picking up the weight. So 110 can stay here in the community, and then the ones further west will also be available. Then we look at our ambulances as a regional response. So not necessarily does that just respond to Collinwood Heights, but the geographical area outside of Collinwood Heights as well as needed. So, but again, we're looking good. That ambulance is still picking up the majority of the calls that we're seeing here in Collinwood Heights, and then we'll lean on those other ones as the situation depends. Then of course our percentile times. So we're still responding where we want to be. The only way we can really change this number or drop our response time is to build more fire stations. This is a little bit higher than the national standard, but the national standard is also very difficult to achieve, and there's not a lot of places that do that. So for us, with our standards to cover, the 749 is a place that we've determined that we're pretty happy with, and that's a really good response time. And then 522 in our 50th percentile. So our crews are aggressively and safely getting those calls exactly as we asked them to do. And recently, with kind of the approval of our standards of cover, one of the goals that we're focusing on is our turnout times. And so we're trying to get to calls slightly faster. And one of the things that we found that we can do is the amount of time it takes from dispatch notifying the fire station to the time that apparatus is leaving the station is something we have almost direct control over. And so we're encouraging our crews to be a little more aggressive and assertive when those calls are coming in. And just out of just paying attention to those calls, watching our dispatch boards and our stations, we can be moving to our apparatus a lot quicker. And that's one way we can start decreasing that time. And that's where our focus is going to be right now. So
may I ask a quick
yeah,
question?
absolutely.
So I just want to make sure I interpret what your comment was about national. Is it that the national average is based on denser populations and we're a more
Yeah.
spread out suburbia? And is that what you're referring to?
so
That you're happy with this because we aren't some urban dense
Correct.
place that we're competing against in a national average?
Yeah, so a lot of that standard was based off of the East Coast. And if you look at like a Philadelphia, New York, Boston, they literally have fire stations every other block because of density, just because of how busy they are. And so when they created the standard, and it was a long time ago, NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, developed the standard back in the 70s and 80s. Their time is 4 minutes, which is ridiculously fast, but that's also achievable when you have a station a quarter mile apart from each other. We're here, we're urban, but we're more spread out just by nature. And that's across the valley, and that's common throughout the United States. And so to improve that time, you either got to build more fire stations or put more apparatus out there, which that obviously cost is the number one factor, right? And so with us, again, if you were to look at the non-standard, this is probably pretty common. And as a matter of fact, it's probably been above standard for just your outside of the NFPA. And there's very few places that meet that. It's a benchmark. It's quite the achievement if you do, but it's again, ridiculously fast. And for us, when you equate traffic, travel time, travel distance, just everything we do, we can manage our time from the call being received in dispatch to the time they notify us and the time that we get to the apparatus. But once we leave the station, it's just dependent upon environmental factors. So we'll do everything we can to continue to improve that time. But yeah, it's well within a reasonable metric. So
Sorry,
Well,
you just said this. Oh, sorry. And this includes the taking the call from Beck.
yes,
and
yeah,
getting-
this one right here, this does not include call processing. So not yet.
Okay,
So that's the challenge that you obviously are familiar with police. It's gotten substantially better on the fire side with the improvements they made with their software upgrades and the stuff they've done over the last 18 months or so. We've seen a significant decrease in that time, and the call processing time is completely out of our hands as well. We can work with VEC, we can establish policies, we can apply a lot of pressure to them, and they're doing what they can. But that was a factor about 2 to 3 years ago. That when I look at our numbers now compared to them, there's definitely a decrease because VEC is up their game a little bit on the fire side at least. So that's an improvement for sure, but this doesn't account for that. So if you have that in there, you probably look at a 45 to 70-second on average increase in time.
well, I just want you to know, I didn't make the comment in any derogative
Oh, no.
way because in District 4, we're so fortunate to have
Yeah.
Station 116. And I can say we had to call your folks a year ago and I
Yeah.
couldn't believe how fast. I bet it wasn't 2 minutes. I mean, it was so fast. I didn't time it, but so please know, we really appreciate what you do. And we're so
Yeah.
thankful to have Station 116 in District 4.
Well, and remember that, and that's the 90th percentile. So we have a lot of calls too that are falling, some above, most below, right? And so I'd say our response times are between that 5:22 and 7:49. That's probably an average, right? So they're quick and they're safe. That's one thing we look at too, is the most dangerous part of our job next to like fighting a fire is getting to the fire. And so driving is where most of the mishaps happen. And so for us to get there as quick as they are and as busy or as urban area as this can be, especially in the daytime hours, it's pretty impressive that we haven't had any issues with that and they're getting there that quick. So and like I say, we'll do everything we can, but there's some things that are just out of our control. So we do our best to overcome the others. And that's all for that. Is there any other questions?
I just want to add appreciation for all that you do. You could have picked a lot easier and safer job. But thanks for putting yourselves in harm's way on behalf of our residents.
Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it so much.
yeah, thanks, Chief. Just to reiterate maybe to our residents and to the council, we're blessed in Cottonwood Heights, Assistant Chief Pilgrim, we are the only municipality inside Unified Fire Authority that has an assistant chief as our liaison. So we take pride in that. We love Riley coming here, and even though it's an added responsibility, we're appreciative of it. So thanks for that report.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You're here.
Yep. Thank you.
Means we're either really pushy job or we need a lot of extra supervision.
There you go. Well, thank you. Okay, we have 5 legislative action items for the council to consider. We're going to start with a consideration of resolution 2023-28. approving an entry proposal contract with Custom Events, Inc. for the 2023 Butlerville Days. We discussed this item earlier in our work session. Any other questions or comments on this item from the council?
Custom Events has done Butlerville Days many times. They'll be back this year. These been able to provide it now with the free rides for the kids. It's very, very popular. I'd move that we approve resolution 2023.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and a second from Councilmember Burrell. Final questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Holton,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Next is consideration of item 7.2, consideration of resolution 2023-29, approving performance contracts for the 2023 Butlerville Days. We also had the opportunity to discuss this item in our work session earlier. Final question, any questions, comments from the staff or council?
I just want to say that it's very commendable that the Butlerville Days Committee is staying within their budget with all of these things. And so way to go.
Thank you, Councilmember Burrow.
It is very challenging. Like a lot of things, the cost of these events or the cost of performers and all the food vendors, everything like that. But events coordinator does an excellent job. Not too much gets passed through contracts and making sure that they're what we need.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-29, approving performance contracts for Butlerville Days.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution 2023.
And I will second.
A motion to approve from Councilmember Newell and a second from Councilmember Holton. Final questions, comments? I'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Holton.
Yes.
I will vote. Item 7.3 tonight is consideration of resolution 2023-30, declaring police K-9 Chi surplus. We also had the opportunity to discuss this item in our work session. Any other questions or comments from the council?
I wish that canine the best of luck and a beautiful future. Thanks for their service.
Love it, love it. Okay, at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-30.
We approve.
I will second.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and the second from Councilmember Holton. Final questions, comments? And I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell.
Yes.
Councilmember Holton,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Item 7.4, consideration of resolution 2023-31, declaring certain property surplus pertaining to the police department. We also discussed this item early in our work session. Any other questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-31.
I move that we approve resolution 2023-31.
I'll second.
A motion to approve from Councilmember Holton and a second from Councilmember Newell. Final questions, comments? Now call for the vote. Councilmember Burrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Holton,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Our last legislative item for tonight is a consideration of resolution 2023-32, approving an independent contractor agreement with Precision Concrete Cutting, Inc. for the years 2023 to 2025. We also discussed this item earlier in our work session. Any other questions or comments from the council?
I think the $35,000 dedicated to this is very worthy. The more we can make our city walkable, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
We've started this program a long time ago. I believe this specific contract, this contract for that part of that is for 15,000, but it does make, since we've started it, it's made walking and getting around a lot easier because anybody who's had a stroller or any type of wheels on a sidewalk, it makes a huge difference.
Thank you.
I would move that we approve resolution 2023.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and a second from Councilmember Burrell. Final questions, comments? And I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Holton,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay, the last item on our agenda this evening is just approval of our consent calendar. Could I get a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve from Councilmember Newell and a second from Councilmember Holton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's it for this evening. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.